So I'm a professor of finance here at the Paul Marsh School of Business. I'm also a faculty director of the Todd and Lisa Holbrook Center for Investment Wealth Management, which is hosting tonight's event here for Feroz. Feroz has a lot of hats. All right, he never wears a hat, but he has a lot of hats. So many of you know him as the senior principal and portfolio manager at Compact, where he's been for almost 30 years now. Of course, he's one of the most educated and most read people I've ever met in my life. I mean, he's got an MBA, he's got an MIM, he's got a CFP, and every other designation you could imagine. He's read more books, I think, this week than I've read my entire life, which is, actually, I'm going to make a joke about that later, so I'll save that one. But here at UCI, we actually know him very differently. So Feroz is actually a professor for us here at UCI. So he teaches our wealth management class, and is by far one of the most popular and well-reviewed classes that we have here on campus. Every single year, our MBA, our MD, MBA students, our Master of Finance students are clamoring to get in the class. We have a wait list that's so big, we ask Feroz to teach more students than we allow in a classroom because they want to get in. Just to show you how popular Feroz is compared to me. All right, we both teach at 7 p.m. at night, during the 7 to 10 p.m. On his last class, Feroz says that he's going to keep teaching until the first student says they want to go home. Right? So as soon as one of the 70 kids in the room says they want to go home, they get to go home. All right? He teaches until after 11 p.m. before the first student says they want to go home. If I did that in my classroom, we'd be done at 7:01. All right? We would be just out immediately. All right? Not only is he a great teacher for us, but he also chairs the Holbrook Center. He's been chair for almost a decade now, where he keeps pushing us to do more and more stuff, like the program we're putting on this week, the Investments Financial Planning and You program. We started more than 12 years ago. This summer alone, we'll have 4 weeks of the program with over 250 kids. Feroz and I dedicate our time to the program for free, so we can use the proceeds of the program to put on other center programming, and also put on our Life Vest program, which is a residential program for underserved kids, to hopefully make them the first in their families to go to college. So he's had a tremendous impact. So regardless of how you know Feroz, from Compact or from here at UCI, everyone knows Feroz is all about making everybody happier, having a better life. And certainly that is what this book is all about. And so I don't want to hold up Feroz any more than I have. I'm going to let him come up here and talk a little bit about the book. But it's my pleasure to introduce Feroz Ansari, who's got a new title today, which is National Best-Selling Author. So let's welcome Feroz to the stage here.
Thank you,
so much, Feroz. Enjoy.
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. I would like to begin by thanking my family, my friends, some of our Compact clients, my colleagues from UCI, and some students. So thank you for being here. It means a great deal. I would like to begin our conversation by inviting you on a journey. And it's going to be a journey of awareness. A journey of awareness with a destination that is going to focus on our on awareness. And what we would like to accomplish at the end of our journey is to be in a place where we can find our authentic truth. Now, when we talk about what's the purpose of authentic truth, why should we explore our authentic truth, the goal is that we may, again, the conversation again is going to be about things that are obvious to us, but obvious does not mean accurate. Obvious does not mean correct. Obvious does not mean truthful. So, and obvious sometimes could even deceive us into believing things that may not actually be true. So, and it could also be an impediment in terms of us being able to achieve our meaning of life, the purpose that we want to pursue, and even financial security. So I will start again our conversation by asking a question that I always ask on the first day of my class. And I say, if you imagine you're 60 years old and you have two choices. You can get a Nobel Prize or you have $20 million. What would you choose? And let's see, how would you answer that question? Think about it. So initially when I asked this question, I was always surprised. I said, and the answer every time, 95%, 97% of the students would say, I want the 20 million. There is no doubt. What are you talking about? It's always the 20 million. So now, after a decade of teaching and having that conversation, I realize that this is our mindset. Why do we believe, or why do I believe that everyone prefers the 20 million rather than the Nobel Prize? What is driving that need or that want? I feel that it is, since we are born, and most people across the world believe that money is happiness, money is joy, money is meaning, right? That is our mindset. And having the opportunity to work with fairly wealthy and accomplished people and some very smart students, I believe it's only half the answer. In order to live a joyful, meaningful, thoughtful, and examined life, what we require is total wealth, which is wisdom wealth and financial wealth. I'll go to the presentation now. Okay, so in order to achieve a meaningful, joyful, examined life, what we need is total wealth. What is total wealth? Total wealth, I define it as wisdom wealth plus financial wealth. Total wealth is our prize, and wisdom wealth is our acceptance. It's our awareness. It's relationships. And financial wealth are the resources that we need in order to lead a meaningful life. So half the book is devoted towards wisdom wealth, and the other half towards financial wealth. So I try to keep a balance. So I think about 175 pages of the book, I write about wisdom wealth. So why are we embarking on this journey of awareness? What are we trying to accomplish? Where do we want to, and why do we want to go there? Again, the biggest impediment is our lack of awareness, and the lack of awareness of what? The lack of awareness that we are born inside a concrete box, and most of our life we stay inside that concrete box. So imagine you being born inside a concrete box, and you spending your entire life inside that concrete box. But you don't feel the concrete around you, because on the inside, this concrete box is comfortable. It's lined with satin, right? It's familiar. It gives you protection, right? But what it stops you from doing, in terms of your ability to be able to live a meaningful life, your concrete box sort of inhibits what you desire or what your authentic definition of success is. And how do you acquire this concrete box? Where does it come from? It is the geography of your birth. It is the culture of your family. It's the status of your family. It is the religion that you inherit, the culture that you imbibe, the genetics and biology that is encoded in your DNA. These are all the walls of your concrete box, right? And of course, you don't see it, you don't feel it, but that's where all of us live, inside that concrete box. So the question is that how should we look at our concrete box, or how should we recognize that we are inside the concrete box? It starts with awareness. And that is the journey, that is the process that we're going to use tonight to be able to see and feel and experience that concrete box that each one of us is inside of. That's the goal. And I lay out a 3-step process. It starts with awareness. If you're not aware, if you don't have the information, you don't have the knowledge, you don't have the recognition, you do not know. So awareness is the first step. The second step is action. When based on that awareness, you take action, right? That action, again, and we all follow at some level these 3 steps, right? But when we are talking about action, I do believe that having vision is really important in life, where you want to go. And I think one of our book clubs, we read The Alchemist, and there's a very powerful line in that book. It says, if you want something, if you really have a goal in life, if you want to pursue something, the universe will conspire to make it happen. The universe will conspire to make it happen. So that's the power of taking action. The last part, which is personally very difficult for me, I think it might be difficult for all of you as well, is acceptance. that when you do everything right, you get the awareness, you take action, but that acceptance is not in your, that outcome is not in your control. In multiple situations, when you do everything right, the outcome is not what you wanted, right? How do you accept that outcome? And because the world is random, you do not control the government, you do not control the politics, you do not control the economy, you do not control the markets, right? And on top of that, you do not control the health and attitude and happiness of the people that are important to you. And they have an impact on your life, right? So you, in reality, control very little in life. And then when the outcome is not what we anticipated, right, how do we deal with it? So when you're successful, I say that accept it with humility, accept it with humbleness, because the outcome could be different. But when things do not work out, when, of course, in life there is difficulty, there is failure, there is heartbreak, when that happens, how do we accept it? We should accept it with empathy for ourselves, with grace, and be kind to ourselves that I did what I could, and I only control so much, right? And at that point, now this acceptance again becomes awareness. And there you could be in this virtuous cycle of awareness, action, and acceptance. But you have to be mindful, and then you get into the cycle. The reason why I talk about the concrete box is until I would say I got into my mid-40s, I was right in the middle of the concrete box, right? What was my concrete box? As a first-generation immigrant, I thought what I want to pursue, what I want to chase is financial wealth, and that is going to bring me joy, it is going to bring me purpose, it's going to bring me happiness. To some extent, that was right. But when I got into my mid-40s, I realized that there's something missing. There is something I want more. And that more was not wealth. That more was not money. That more was that sense of purpose, that sense of meaning, right? So, and I think each one of us have our own definition of purpose, our own definition of meaning, and then we will continue to explore that as we continue this journey of exploration, of awareness. The 4-step method, we will go through it. Know yourself, know the world, know your purpose, and build financial security. Financial security comes in the end, but I would be very clear. It is really hard to be happy when you're hungry. It is really difficult to build deep relationships when you're worried about rent. So financial security is critically important, but it's only half the answer. It is only, if you get your money right, you'll only be 50% there. You need to get the other 3 parts right as well. Okay. So know yourself, that's the first step in the Living 360 process. What is it? So I think every money decision, right, your career choice, your relationship, they all flow from one source, that is you, right? Your beliefs, your emotions, and your inner architecture of your mind, right? That sort of pushes you is, okay, this is who you are. So the question that I want to bring to all of you is, why do you believe what you believe? And where do these beliefs come from? How many of us have thought about this? Why do I believe what I believe? And where do these thoughts and these ideas come from? I think the 4 important factors. One is your religion. Second, your politics. Third is your genetics and biology. And the last one, we will talk about this briefly, we could go on it for a long time, is how much free will do we really have, and are we living in a deterministic world? So let's start with the first one, which is religion. And again, I would like to start with this question, that if you do follow a faith tradition, is it the same as your parents? What do you think? Is it the same as your parents? Right? So then the question that I ask, is religion an inheritance or is it a choice? Do you actually choose your religion or you inherited it? What's the answer, you think? Right? Sorry? You were born in that box, right? You were born, so that comes with primarily with inheritance. And Richard Dawkins says that religion is the most durable form of cultural transmission that humans undertake. It is religion. And look at these numbers. a child born in the US to a Muslim family, 99% of them stay Muslim. That number for Hindus in US is 82%. For Judaism, it's 76%. For Christianity, it is 73% in the US, but in Philippines, this number is 99%. In Hungary, this number is 98%. So we basically are born into a religion, right? And we practice it. The question is not, I'm not trying to say whether we should follow or not follow a particular faith tradition. The idea is to recognize how we got our faith, right? That is the question here. And it should not become a wall in our concrete box. That is the question. That is what we are trying to accomplish here. That awareness of how you got to believe, where you got your faith tradition, is basically making a hole in your concrete box. That's the conversation. And if you look at religion, right, all religions at the core have a very similar idea, which is about humility, about compassion, about love, about justice, right? Those are all the ideas. They're very similar ideas. But if we start believing that my way is the right way, my path is the path to heaven or redemption, or it is the path to moksha, and then I will meet Atman, I'll become one with Atman, right? If you believe that my ritual and my practice is the only practice, right, that is when you sort of, you're not trying to look outside the concrete box. That is the question, or that is the awareness part in this conversation. So as I've been researching all of these, or thinking about and reading about all these ideas, I've come to a conclusion. And the conclusion is that either all religions at the core carry the truth. Either all religions at their core carry the truth, or none of them do, right? Which is, I think if you try to understand it, if you try to recognize it, what does it mean? And again, if we have that idea, then we can be more open-minded to other people's faith traditions, to other rituals, to other practices, because at the core, everyone is trying to find that connection with, or that spiritual connection with a higher being. Right? So that is the purpose here, to have this conversation and to be able to continue on this path of awareness. The next is politics, right? How do we get our political ideology? Why is someone a Republican? Why is someone a Democrat? Why is someone independent? How do we get it, right? So I'll start by saying that religion, politics, like religion, follows a very similar path, right? So if you give me 4 data points, you give me a person's race, you give me a person's zip code, you give me a person's occupation, and you give me a person's religion, I can predict with 98% probability, right, what their political ideology is. So if we can predict by just these 4 data points what your political ideology is, do you really choose your politics? Or is it, as Mark Twain would say, a corn-pone opinion, right? Which is, it's your self-interest or your environment that is putting you in that political concrete box. The conversation, again, here is important because in this age of social media, if you believe if you belong to a certain, or if you are attracted to a particular ideology, you will be inundated with that information and you'll start believing, oh, this is the truth, this is the right way. Another interesting data point here, which is that during the 2024 elections, 94% of left-leaning voters voted for the Democratic presidential candidate. 95% of the right-leaning conservative voters voted for the conservative candidates. So it did not matter who was on the ballot, what their policies were, or what their platform was. You vote for your tribe. Team vote, teams blue, votes blue, team red, votes red. This is how we vote. Why is that important, and what's the solution? Can you imagine, if you're a left-leaning voter, can you put yourselves in the shoes of a conservative And can you try to convince yourself why the other side is right? Or if you're a conservative, can you do the same? Yeah, put yourself in the shoes of a liberal and say why they are right. It is intellectually very hard because, again, this concrete box that you're born into, right? And as you progress in age, we pour more concrete on this box. And to be able to make a hole in it, right? Or to be able to carve a window, it's really hard intellectually, right? Emotionally, we want to stay in, right? We do not want to look out. So that's the challenge here. So again, politics can be another wall in our concrete box that we live inside of. The third is biology and genetics. So I think at some level, we can look at religion, we can look at politics, and we can step back and create more awareness. Genetics and biology may be a harder one. This may be a wall that is harder to crack. But having this awareness, moving forward in this journey of awareness can be very meaningful. So here are some important facts here. That influence of genetics on depression is 38%. On kidney failure, it's 40%. Heart disease, it's 50%, right? This is how powerful your genes are. So having this recognition and being aware of our genetic predispositions does allow us to be able to embrace the influence. Of course, we all know about epigenetics, right? Okay, we have certain genetic profile that interacts with the environment, and certain genes express themselves, others do not, right? But you can only influence it to a certain point. So being aware of our genetic predispositions, I think, could actually be quite liberating. Now, here again, this is a number. This is something that I've been exploring actually for the last 17 years. And the first time I came across this data or these studies, it was hard for me to accept or believe them. But today, this is the accepted consensus in positive psychology. So the first idea here is that 50% of a person's happiness is genetic. 50%. So how happy you are, how happy your kids are, how happy your friends are, 50% is genetic, right? Some people we know, they are, even though they may be in a difficult situation, they may be living in hard circumstances, but they're always happy because they won the genetic happiness lottery, right? They're lucky. There are other people who appear to have everything, and you may see that they're not happy, right? They may have more depressive genes. So this number itself, which is 50%, is very significant in terms of happiness. The other more surprising number was 10%. Where you live, how much money is in your bank, what car you drive, how big is your house, whether you're single or married, what's your education level. All of our life circumstances only account for 10% of a person's happiness. It is just 10%. 10, right? So 50% is genetic, 10% is our life circumstances. Money, car, size of your house, your status, your position, your title, your academic background, all of that is 10%. What is really positive here is the 40%. That is within our control. It is intentional activity, how we choose to live, how we choose to think, how we choose to act. Again, here, the journey of awareness and knowing this can be very powerful, right? In terms of how we structure our life. And again, you cannot go back and choose your parents, right? So the genetic profile you have is what you have, right? It takes a long time to change your life circumstances, but what you can change or where we can make a huge difference is the intentional activity, the 40%. So we can each significantly enhance our life satisfaction and happiness by focusing on this 40%. And in the book, I go through a lot of ideas that we could incorporate, but this 40% is something that is completely in our control, so we can significantly enhance our life experience by focusing on, these are, again, We will talk about this later in the presentation. But relationships are the key to this 40%. It is relationships and gratitude, and we'll talk about that in a minute. This topic is more controversial, and I would ask you, do you think that you have free will? If you decided to wear the blue shirt instead of the black shirt, did you make that choice consciously? Or you may have made it consciously, but you think that you made that choice freely? Do you think if you decided to, you made the choice freely, right? So if you ask someone who believes in determinism, right, they would say, no, that's the choice you would have made, right? That's the choice you would have made. So again, the reason to have this conversation is to create that awareness around this debate that how much free will do humans really possess? How much control do we have on our own life and on our own destiny? I personally believe that as humans, we have this special quality of metacognition. You can think about your own thinking, right? You can think about your own thinking. And that gives you the ability to evaluate choices, to delay, to veto, right? To weigh alternatives, right? And then go a different path. So I personally feel that maybe in mundane or regular small choices, we don't have much free will because we don't think about it. We act on our heuristics, but when we have consequential choices, at that point, I believe that free will does come into play. If you ask philosophers who believe in determinism, they say you can weigh all the alternatives. In the end, the choice that you make is the choice you would have made, right? That is the idea of determinism. I think whether there is free will in this world, or we live in a determined, or our life is completely determined, the society believes in free will. If you look at our laws, if you look at voting, if you look at our economy, if you look at our morality, all of these ideas rest on the fact that the society believes that we have agency, right? Whether we have agency or not, so we have to live by the fact that there is agency. And there is research which shows that people who believe that they have agency and free will, they're happier, they're more satisfied. But knowing that this debate has been going on for thousands of years, and we do not know how much free will we have, it should again be a liberating thought in terms of how you make choices. And if you have not made great choices sometimes in life, you can always say that, I live in a deterministic world, and the choice that I made is the choice I would have made, right? So, okay. All right. Know the world. So that's the second element, which is know the world. So first is you need to know yourself. Knowing yourself is critically important, but in order to be able to live a joyful life that is supported by financial security, you need to know the world, right? Because again, your happiness, your career, your relationship, your financial security is all dependent on what happens around the world. So it is important for us to know what are the mega trends, where is the world going, how should I prepare myself and my family to be able to deal with the risks that may come my way or my family's way, or the potential opportunities that I have. So if you again believe and here we are again continuing on a journey of awareness, if you believe your media feed, you would feel that the world is going to hell in a handbasket. You would feel that things are really falling apart. But data tells you something that is completely opposite. I would say completely opposite. If you look at global life expectancy, back in 2000, life expectancy was 66 years. Today, it is 73. Under 5 mortality has gone down by 52%. Back in 2000, 30% of the world's population lived in extreme poverty, That number today is 8.5%. And 68% of the world is connected to the internet. So the world is more, people have more information, they're living longer, they're healthier, right? They're less poor, right? That's the state of humanity. So the human condition has never been better. We are living in the best of times as far as humans or Homo sapiens are concerned. I don't know if I can say the same about other species, but for us, we live in the best of times, right? So, and then the other thing that we all might feel is that, oh, there is so much death and conflict and destruction and war that's taking place. Look at the numbers. Going back to early 1900, if you look at the number of people dying in wars, right, has been declining consistently, except during the Second World War. So from 2000 to 2025, they say about 3 million people died in global conflicts. Between 1925 and 1950, that number was 70 million. 3.75% of the world's population died in wars and conflicts. So today, contrary to what you may believe, the world has never been more peaceful in terms of global fatalities in war. That is the reality. But if we focus on our social media feeds, we would believe, oh my God, there is so much death and destruction. Yes, we have more information. We get to see everything that happens, right? 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, you would not see any of that, right? So that's important here. So now that we know that we are aware, we have taken the next step in a journey of awareness, that the world has never been better. How do we leverage this luck, this good fortune that we have had by living in a time where life has never been better? Okay. Then here is another interesting fact, and this again, I'm summarizing a lot of research here, that anyone who's under 50 has a pretty reasonable chance of making it to age 100. And 70 is the new 53, meaning that the cognitive ability of a 70-year-old today is that of a 53-year-old that was back in 2000. So 70 is the new 53, right? So the good news is that we are all going to live longer and we are all going to be healthier, right? But then long life also brings its own set of challenges. How do we bring meaning and purpose and financial security when we are 80 years old, 85 years old, 90 years old, 95 years old, or maybe 100? What will give us meaning and purpose at that point? That is a question to think about, and that's another idea that I would like to add to your consciousness today. Okay, now, know your purpose. Okay, this is the third part of the book. And here, I say that until you understand your purpose or your meaning, I don't think you can never feel whole. Most people, right, including me, until for a long time, never thought about this. Okay, because what was I chasing? I was chasing financial wealth because I was inside the box. That's what I was chasing. And people don't really have time because life is busy, right? But unless we get to sit with these questions, our life does not, at least I did not feel that my life was whole because I was only focused on financial wealth and not these ideas. So until you understand why you're here or what your purpose is, it is really hard to be able to find authentic meaning in your life. Okay, where does meaning come from life? What can give your life meaning? What can give your life meaning, or what gives meaning and purpose to life? It's your faith, right? It could be faith for people. It's family. It could be duty or service. It could be your career, relationships, and gratitude. These are the things that can bring meaning and purpose to life, right? Now, let's start with purpose. Whether we believe that we have cosmic purpose or not, all of us have terrestrial purpose, meaning that we have value while we are on earth. You are valuable or meaningful to your friends, to your family, to your colleagues, maybe to your community, maybe to your city, maybe to your country, maybe to humanity. So while we are here on earth, we can all agree that there is meaning to our life. There is purpose to our life. Each one of us can agree that we have terrestrial meaning, right? The next question is cosmic meaning. do we have cosmic meaning? And people who follow faith tradition, they may say, yes, I have cosmic meaning. I'm going to end up in heaven or in paradise, or I will become one with Atman, right? Or whatever their belief set may be. So people who have faith, they may believe that they have cosmic meaning. But whether someone is an atheist or an agnostic or a theist, we can all agree that terrestrial meaning exists for each one of us. And Confucius has very interesting ideas for us, for each one of us, to be able to enhance or deepen our terrestrial meaning while we are here. And Confucius says that you have to start with yourself. And here I say, when you start with yourself, it has to be that awareness. It has to be that action. It has to be that acceptance of the outcome. So that is when you are developing yourself, right in the middle. The next part is your family, right? You focus on your family. The third is, so once you've developed, so if you are not able to take care of yourself, it's really hard to take care of your family. So start with self. Then your purpose radiates out. It goes to family. Then it goes to your community. Then to your nation. And then maybe to humanity, right? So if we think that this is how we should deepen our purpose, increase meaning in our life through these concentric circles that Confucius created for us. Here is another very cool idea, which is, I don't know how many of you read about this Harvard study, which has now been going on for 85 years. And this is the longest running adult development study in the US. And every few years, they share their research conclusions. And every few years, they come back with the same idea, that positive relationships keep us happier, healthier, and help us live longer. It's all about relationships. They say that your lifespan and health span can be better predicted by the quality of your relationships at age 50 than if you had diabetes or heart issues or kidney problems. They said positive relationships will determine how long this person is going to live and how good their quality of life is going to be. So life is all about relationships, right? And here, Harvard study that's now been going on for 85 years, that's the idea. And in the book, I spent a lot of time. Here is another interesting concept. In this age of social media, right, we all have so many friends, right? Dunbar, a British anthropologist, right, said that given the size and architecture of human brain, we can have 5 innermost deep relationships. 5. He said we can have 15 close family and friends. 5 really deep, 15 close family and friends. 50 good friends, right? So 5, 15, and 50. Then we can have 150 meaningful connections and 500 acquaintances. And they say you can remember 1,500 names or faces. This is the capability of human mind, right? So again, relationships, my view is that it's the 5 and the 15 that matter. The other 50, the 150, the 500, the 1,500, they may have some value, but it is the 5 and the 15. So how do you nurture those 5 and 15? That's going to determine your lifespan, your health span, and your happiness. While we talk about how important relationships, what's really concerning is that today, 12% of US adults say they do not have a single friend. 12% say they do not have a single friend. This number was 3% back in 1990. So it's gone. So now each one of us, I don't know how many social media friends you have, hundreds, maybe thousands, right? Are they really your friends, right? No. In terms of 12% have 0 friends, 0. So imagine the impact that it has on our quality of life, right? So it's the depth that matters rather than the breadth. That's another step towards awareness that we are creating in order to get to the destination of your authentic truth. That's another step. Moving forward. So These are two interesting questions. The first one, all of us know how important your choice about your partner is. The second is a more controversial idea, and I do spend quite a bit of time in the book talking about it, having children. There is a South African philosopher, and he says that having children is immoral. He says having children is immoral. And his idea is that there is more pain than pleasure in this world. What right do you have to bring a life in this world if there is more pain than pleasure? This is his idea. I have two boys. They bring immense meaning to me. They bring immense joy to me. So I do not subscribe to this idea, but it's certainly worth thinking about, right? Which is, so in my concrete box, what I had, get married, have two kids, buy a big house, or have a big house, have a swimming pool, and you're successful and life is going to be good. I never thought about these things until, I would say, 15 years ago. But his idea, where I disagree with David Bannetar significantly, is he said that people who believe that they're happy, even they're not happy, right? And he says that they're creating a delusion because life is so bad that you have to create a delusion that you're happy, right? And he says, that could be a delusion that may come from religion. I'll have another life where I will be in paradise. He's saying even people who believe, right? Or they say, you know what, you lower your expectations. So, but I do not, but it's an idea that I do discuss in the book, and it is interesting to think about it. A couple of other things. This is another cool concept that I have shared with my students and my clients, and I've learned kind of how to manage through this. So, what is hedonic adaptation, right? And how does it compare or contrast with gratitude? Hedonic adaptation is the ability of humans to adapt to good things and bad things in life. So each human, each person, on an average, goes through 3, 4, or maybe 5 very difficult situations in life. 3, 4, or 5. What happens when someone goes through a difficult situation? Their happiness goes down. What happens after a while? Their happiness comes back to their genetic set point. You remember that 50% happiness is genetic, right? So we come back to a genetic set point. So we have this evolutionary capability to be able to deal with difficult things in life. Now moving forward, so what does it say about good things in life? The same idea which is helping us with survival also works on every good thing in our life because we get used to it, right? So here is some interesting data points. When people buy a new car, they do get a bump in happiness. How long does that last? 3 weeks. When people buy a new house, they get a bump in happiness. How long does that last? 9 months. When people get married, they believe it's eternal bliss, right? Life is going to be paradise, right? I have found my soulmate. They do get a bump in happiness, but lasts for 2 years. And right, after 2 years, you get back to your genetic set point, right? You get used to your partner, your spouse, everything that was special. No big deal. So it's 2 years. Now, so how do we step out of this box, right, of hedonic adaptation? Again, hedonic adaptation, what is it doing? It is creating this concrete box of hedonic adaptation. We're getting used to all the good things that exist in our life, right? Now, there is an interesting equation I have in the book where I say happiness equals reality minus shifting expectations. What does it mean? Happiness equals reality minus your shifting expectations. So your happiness has nothing to do with your reality. Or let me say, it has very little to do with your reality. It is your happiness is determined by how you compare your reality to what you expected it to be. Right? So let's suppose someone at the age of 60 they wanted to have $5 million in the bank. They only have 2. Are they happy or unhappy? Their expectation was 5, right? They're at 2. Are they happy or unhappy? Their expectation was higher, right? They're unhappy, right? If a student wanted to have a 4.0 GPA, they have 3.7. Are they happy or unhappy? They're unhappy, right? So your happiness is not determined by your reality, or not all of it. Again, if someone is hungry, it's really hard to be happy. But beyond that point, it is our expectations that determines how happy or unhappy we are. And right in front of the word expectation, there is a word shifting that I've put there. That your expectations in life are changing. What you expect is primarily determined by what you get and what you had in the past, what people around you are getting, what's happening on social media. All of that is factoring in to your life's expectations. That's really important to know. So how do we manage, or how can we enhance our happiness? First, being aware of this equation. Reflect on this equation for a second. Do we agree that this equation is meaningful, right? Does this apply to you? Can your life be different if you understood this equation in terms of happiness equals reality minus shifting expectations? Think about this. For me, this has been a profound equation, right, which I reflect on all the time. Let's keep going. Here is another interesting idea. So I have a client who's now 80 years old, and he says, Feroz, every morning I get up and I tell myself, I'm smart, I'm handsome, I'm cool, I'm intelligent. And he's saying, I've been telling this myself for 30 years. He's saying, you know what? My brain now believes it. I walk into a room, and this is how I feel. In my class, I ask students that who do you have the most conversation with? So who do you have the most conversation with? Most people say, oh, my spouse, my friend, my partner, my girlfriend, my boyfriend. In reality, you have a continuous chatter in your mind, right? You're having this conversation in your mind continuously. And this conversation is taking you to an optimistic place. It is taking you to a pessimistic place. Most people do not realize about this dialogue. And how? So if you ask people who believe in determinism, they say, well, you have no control over this conversation. It's going to go wherever it goes. People who believe in free will say, you know what, we have some control. Sometimes we can nudge this conversation. We can say, oh, what am I thinking? Why am I thinking this? I need to think differently, right? So that inner voice in your mind is critically important. Being aware of that dialogue that is taking place continuously and where it's taking you, it is important. In the book, I talk about how you can practice gratitude. So again, here what is important is that be able to know that conversation, be able to direct that conversation, and if that conversation is taking you to a dark place, right, try to change the direction of this conversation. The last part of the book, and half the book, is about building financial security. I will skip over most of it because I think the group here, most of us are fairly financially secure. But in the book, I talk about how you can, everything from cash flow to net worth to ETF, how you can create portfolios, how you can save, how you can invest. All of that is in the book and the comprehensive investment guide. So now, why is financial security important? Why should we worry about it? Oh, first, it is half the equation of total wealth, wisdom wealth plus financial wealth. But look at this data. The richest 1% of men live 14 years longer than the poorest 1% in the US. 14 years longer. So if you're rich, there's a strong likelihood that you're going to live for a much longer time than someone who doesn't have the resources. That number is important. 1 in 5 US adults every year, they have a mental health challenge. Primarily, or financial insecurity plays a big role. 97.5% of all assets are owned by the top 50%. The top 1% in the US own 30% of all assets. And 500,000 families last year declared bankruptcy. So if you do not manage your finances well, you're not going to live for a long time. There is risk of mental illness, right? You don't own much assets, and 500,000 people declared bankruptcy. So financial wealth is as important as wisdom wealth. We need to have a balance. So I think I will skip over this. So what was our journey all about today? What are we trying to create? Where are we trying to go? Here, what we are trying to create, so we all live inside some sort of a structure, a belief set. But the idea is that even though we will always inhabit a concrete box, right, The goal is that we should be able to carve windows in our concrete box, have a door, have a key to unlock that door and step out of that concrete box, right? The reason, what I personally believe, and I've seen that with our clients and with my students, which is that if you're able to carve windows and have a door and be able to unlock it, you will see yourself and the world differently. That is one thing that's going to happen if you are aware of your concrete box and if you can step outside it. And it comes from knowing yourself, knowing the world, knowing your purpose, right? Having financial security. You will authentically understand your needs and wants. What are your needs? What are your wants? What are you chasing and why? You'll be able to create a new relationship with money, right? And achieve a degree of financial security. You will be able to leverage that 40% intentional activity that's in our control. You will be able to leverage that. And then, last but not least, you will be able to defeat that hedonic adaptation and be able to practice gratitude. This is what your new, expanded, brighter, wider concrete box can do for you. So, in the end, I would say that the work is never about escaping your box entirely. We all live in some sort of a structure. The deeper task is to be aware of it, make it conscious, and make it authentic. So in the end, I say you now carry the key to the door to step outside your concrete box. So thank you so much, and live your 360. Thank you. Thank you.
All right. So I'm going to Feroz now talk here for a few minutes, and we'll take some Q&A here. So I've had the pleasure of knowing you for a long time. So actually, a lot of the things in the concrete box are in the book that we've spoken about over golf or lunch or other things. And I guess now it's been, 2 years you've been working on the book? 3 years?
3 years, yeah.
Yeah. So the book is a labor of love. It's truly, Murphy's Law, right? The first 80% of the book took 80% of the time. The last 20% took 80% of the time, right? So what inspired you to finally, write things down and write the book?
So Chris, I think I spent majority of my life inside my own concrete box, right? So the recognition of what I was missing in my own life, and then working with clients and students, I felt that our focus is only on one part of what can bring us joy, what can bring meaning, and what can bring happiness. So the ideas that I have in the book, I feel that if we are able to implement them, our life experience can be significantly enhanced. Because over the years, I have tried to practice some of the things that I've written in the book, and of course, I've been researching this for about 2 decades, and I think it could make a meaningful difference in people's lives. I think that was my motivation, that it can certainly enhance the life experience of people who will engage with this information at a deeper level. That was the goal.
All right. So I think one of the interesting parts about life is it's really easy to try and set a goal. It's hard to stick to it. So as I was going to joke at the beginning here, I think for the last 49 years of my life, I'm 49 by the way, I've always said each New Year's I'm going to read more books. And I've successfully never completed my New Year's resolution. So you mentioned if you're able to do the things in the book. So I guess the first thing I ask you is what have you struggled with in terms of implementing what you talk about in the book? Maybe an example or two for the audience, kind of about what you've struggled with and then how you overcame that. I think that would be helpful.
So Chris, the hardest part for me is acceptance. When things do not work out the way you expect them to happen. So you do your best. You create awareness. You get knowledge. You say, you know what, I have a plan and I'm going to execute it. And then life does what it does. And at that time, personally, that has been the most difficult thing for me, to be able to accept it and be at peace with it. Because, of course, we don't have a choice. We have to accept the outcome. But how do we be at peace with something that we did not expect, something that we did not want? So personally, the acceptance part has been the hardest. I think I control my awareness to an extent. I control the actions that I take. But when things don't work out, that acceptance piece personally has been most difficult for me to be able to, I say, you know what, accept it with empathy. I say, oh, what did I do wrong? I should have acted differently. So acceptance has been the hardest part for me during this entire process.
That probably includes putting the book together, right?
Yeah.
I guess like one of the things that you talked a lot about is awareness. I have some other things, but is awareness. And I think certainly for me, a lot of the data as we've talked over the years and tonight, that's things that you have brought to my awareness. So in some sense, I have my own way to become aware. So you mentioned politics, for example. So I know a lot of us have our concrete box on politics. So I don't know about any of you, but if you go to like msnbc.com and foxnews.com, it's like you're living in two different realities, right? So I actually read like 6 different news sites every morning, from CNN to MSNBC to Fox to Drudge Report to Financial Times to Wall Street Journal. So I get the whole spectrum and try to be aware of what other people are talking about. Do you have any suggestions on like, did you just learn all this through reading or friends, or what do you think is the best way? If you think about your 3 steps, the first one is awareness. People have to become aware of how they're in the box. Do you have any suggestions on?
So I think your environment has a big influence on what your political ideology is. It's your friends. It's your coworkers, right? At work, do you want to say anything that is not in line with the overall political sentiment? Oh, that's going to have an impact on my career. With your friends, if you do not believe or you do not have a similar ideology, that does create a bit of tension. I think the idea is to be able to have that intellectual debate with yourself, question yourself, which I do all the time, right? I think I try to look at both sides of the argument, and I say, you know what, I'm neither a Republican nor a Democrat, and I can switch my vote from one side to the other, depending on how I feel about a candidate. Now, again, here the number is, the operating word is how I feel about the candidate, right? So you cannot take emotion out of politics, just like you cannot take emotion out of religion. But if you can try to have that debate with yourself to say, you know what is the other side saying? And why are they saying it? What is their thought process? What is their rationale? So and with my friends, I try to read as much as I could, as I can. So the goal again there is to be able to, as you said, expose yourself to different sources of information, challenge your own idea, tell yourself, and I say, steel man the other side's idea. Tell yourself that I'm wrong, the other side is right, and let me convince myself why I'm wrong, which again is not easy, but that's the process that I use.
Yes, that is hard to convince yourself you're wrong when you think you're right.
Yes, yeah. Yes.
I've tried to do that. It never works. So I think a couple of things you didn't mention in your presentation, which I found quite interesting, is the $1 billion lottery idea. Can you tell the audience a little bit about that idea that you talk about in the book?
So in the book, I do talk about that the fact that we exist, the fact that we have consciousness, the fact that we were born, right? And even prior to that, the fact that Earth exists at the perfect distance from the sun. We are not too far that everything would freeze. We are not too close that everything would burn. So is that a miracle? Is that a random event? That's a debate that we can continue to have. But the fact that we are here and we have consciousness and we are living in the best of times, right? This is more than $1 billion lottery. I believe that it is $1 trillion lottery. And what do we do with our life, with our existence, with our consciousness? How we can make the most of it? So we have won $1 trillion lottery. How do we maximize what we have won? That's the argument, or that's what I discuss in the book, and then I go further in terms of what we can potentially do to make our life more meaningful and joyful and purposeful, and that's being true to what we have won.
So one other thing you talked about in the book you didn't talk about at all, which I was thinking about, is you mentioned ask people like who their best friend or how many friends they are, and I was going to say Claude. So I don't know if you actually saw this. In China, they're banning personal bots, right? Because people are having relationships with the computer, and China wants people to have kids, right? So they banned them. So one thing you talk in the book a lot about is AI. I just thought it'd be fun for you to talk a little bit about your thoughts on AI, which you shared in the book. I found that really fascinating.
So in the book, we talk about or we analyze where AI is today and where it could be heading and how it could impact our life, how it could impact us individually, how it impacts us in terms of our families and professionally. So given where AI is, whether it has reached AGI or not, right, the fact is that it is going to be a part of humanity, and it will have a very significant impact. So I say that we should use that three-step process, which is awareness, that we should try to be aware of the power of these tools and what these tools can do for us. The second is to take action. We should all try to integrate these tools in our life, because if we can integrate them, they will assist us or they will help us in doing better in what we do. They will help us, again, with our awareness, with being able to make better choices. So we should act in terms of using these models. And then in the end, we have to accept it, that AI is here to stay. It is a profound technology which is going to change humanity. But I do mention one thing in the book, that some of the forecasts in terms of how quickly things are going to change, I'm in the camp that it may take a little bit longer. It's not something that will change the world in 3 months, 6 months, 12 months. I think maybe 5 years, 4 years, we see a very different world. But I'm more in the camp that it takes 8, 10, 15, 20 years for things to be significantly different.
Yeah. I think, well, speaking of longer, so one thing that was the most surprised me was the 70 is the new 53 statistic. So when I was a kid, right, that's since like 2000, right? So when I was a kid, 50 was the new 40. You guys remember that? 50 was the new 40. So in theory, like I'm 30 years younger than I should be right now when I was born. So I'm still in my 20s. I'm quite happy about that. Actually, I'm a teenager, really. I can't even do math. So can you talk a little bit more about it? Because obviously that has a huge impact on all sorts of different things, like expectations for your life. And we know happiness is about your shifting expectations and money management. And so it'd be great to just, if you could expand a little bit on like what the implications of that is for us.
So I think if we are going to live longer, which is what the data is showing, that we are living longer and we are healthier. So both our lifespan is longer and our health span is better. So how do we benefit or how do we take advantage of it rather than be surprised by it? So I think in terms of how we prepare for it, in terms we need to think about our careers. Do we need to work longer? Do we need to be more engaged? The type of work that we do. And so we have this conversation with a lot of our clients, and they say, you know what? If I retire, I'm now 72 years old. When I was younger, I thought 72, I should have retired a long time ago, but I still feel a lot of energy. I don't feel that I'm old. I think I can continue to work. So I think what we will see is that people will be engaged, people will be active for a lot longer, and that is how we have to approach life, which is that we will all be working longer, we will all be living longer, and we should think about our skill set. And then living longer also means that you need to have more resources for your retirement. And then as you get older, imagine you're 90 years old, right? Who's around you? Are your kids there? What's going to bring you meaning and purpose at that time? So these are questions, and and how do we deal with it? And I think the idea is to be aware of it. Awareness, I think, is the first step. And being aware that this is how life will most likely progress will either consciously or subconsciously take us in that direction, that we will take action to get ready.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I know my parents are older now, and you can kind of see they're probably going to go much farther than their parents did, right?
Yes.
So it'll be interesting to see what happens. I guess that's not a good word, but it'll be fun to see what happens as my parents get older from here. I guess probably one of the most surprising statistics is always the happiness factor. I mean, even though you've told me a million times happiness is 50% genetic, I still don't believe it. So I think it's deterministic or something that I can't believe
Right.
that happiness is 50%. And I probably share a little bit, maybe a little bit more about that happiness factor being 50%. And I think a lot of it, as you mentioned, expectation, I think all go together. I mean, how many people play golf in the audience? How many golfers do we have? All right, if you play golf, is anything better at teaching you about shifting expectations than a round of golf? You start out really bad, and then anything, oh my God, I'm such a good golfer, and you start out good. There's a video of Rory McIlroy. He hit like a hook shot, and at the Scottish Open, he just yelled out, "I am so bad at golf," which is just amazing, right? Yeah. Expectations, right?
Absolutely.
So maybe you could elaborate a little bit more on happiness, because I think ultimately, whenever I talk to you about these subjects or the book, I really think that is truly your goal is to make people more happy with their lives.
So I think where the statistic comes from, primarily there's a tremendous amount of research that's been done, of course, on happiness. And this 50% statistic, it comes from twin studies, where they study the happiness of identical twins and fraternal twins. They find that the happiness of identical twins is very, very similar. And for fraternal twins, it is not the same. So if you have a very similar genetic profile, then your happiness is very similar. So, and then these studies have been repeated in different parts of the world, in different environments, and the conclusion is always similar. So today, the consensus in the field of positive psychology is that yes, 50% of our happiness is genetic. And then, of course, expectations and then gratitude, mindfulness, those are all ideas that but how, I think I was having this conversation with some of my students yesterday, that how do you incorporate gratitude in your life, right? Because we live in a world where are humans a tournament species, or are we a pair bonding species, right? I think that's again a fundamental question, that do we need to sort of project our status, right, to be able to say, okay, how we are winning the tournament. And how we project our status, it could be our wealth, it could be our position, it could be our power, right? So the question here is that how do you get into that gratitude framework, right? So I will tell you, I think I was a pretty ungrateful guy living inside my concrete box, that I need to have more, and I want to compete, and I want to do better. But I think at some point, if you realize, and if you come to the conclusion, what is my enough? That's one question that you should ask. The second important fact is that can you genuinely learn to be happy for others? If you are a tournament species, right? I read this article, it's a long piece in The Atlantic, and the author said that I'm only happy when my colleague or my friend or my relative is not doing as well as I am, right? He's saying, I want to sometimes see them be miserable, and that's what makes me feel good about myself, right? And it was a long piece, and I read it, and there was some truth to it, because if you're a tournament species, you want to feel that you're doing better than the people around you. The question that I have asked is that can I learn to be truly happy for the people around me? And so can you be genuinely happy? So the question is that if you have a friend, right, who suddenly builds a house that is nicer and bigger than yours, how do you feel? Oh my God, that house is bigger, right? I thought mine was bigger, right? Your friend buys a nicer car. Your car is no longer as good, right? Or your friend's kids go to a better college. You say, oh, what did I do wrong? Why did my kid not go to Harvard, right? So how do you genuinely overcome this internal sense of competition that we have as humans and start feeling happy for people around you? So I think it took me a long time, but I think I've made some progress in flipping the narrative in my mind. And the narrative in my mind is that if my friend is doing well, he is my friend. I'm proud that he is my friend. If my brother is doing well, oh, he's my brother. That's why I'm happy. Oh, I'm related to him, and he's doing well. If my friend is chosen as the number one portfolio manager, I feel, you know what? He's my friend, and I know him, and he gives me good advice, right? So we have to flip the narrative, and if we are able to make progress in flipping this narrative and start genuinely feeling happy for people around us, life could be completely different.
I think that's, yeah, I agree. Around Thanksgiving, there's a speech I hear every year, and it's kind of sort of we all want to get an apartment, and then once we get the apartment, we say, oh, I just want a bigger apartment. And you get the bigger apartment. Oh, I just want a nicer apartment, right? And it's like, oh, I just want a house. I just want a bigger house. I just want a house on the ocean. And you never stop, and you're never grateful for what you actually have. And you just always want the next thing. So I just have one follow-up question, which is, after you read the Atlantic article, were you sad? Did the author accomplish his goal that you were sad at the end so he could feel better about himself? So I guess maybe one question, maybe we'll open up here to the audience. So I'm just warning you, we'll take questions here in a minute. I guess from a practical perspective, people in the audience, what's the first thing you would tell them to do to start living the 360 life when they walk out the door today? What's the first thing they would do to start living the book when they walk out of here today?
I think it is awareness. Why do we think what we think? Why do we believe what we believe? And why do we want what we want? I think if we can ask these 3 questions and we can reflect on them seriously, I think the answers that we will find will be very illuminating. It will change our expectations. It will bring greater gratitude, where we will be able to appreciate more our reality, right? I think asking those questions and engaging with those questions and stepping out of that concrete box is going to change, I think, your relationship with yourself, with your money, and the people around you.
So we'll open up for some questions. Who's got some questions for us? Who's got go ahead, over here. Quick hand.
Hi there. Feroz, I was so taken with your happiness equation. Happiness equals reality minus shifting expectations. The question is, when do you shift expectations? What kinds of consideration should one take into account when confronted with the possibility or options to switch expectations?
So, Roberta, I think expectations, where do they come from, right? We have to recognize and be aware of where my expectations are coming from. And one way of managing expectations or having the right expectations is to have your own goals. You say, you know what, I'm not looking at people around me. I'm not being influenced by social media. What did I want in life? Where am I in life? And did I expect to be here at this point in my life? And most of us will realize that we are in a place that we never imagined to be in terms of how good everything is. So, having that realization can bring our expectations more in line with gratefulness and mindfulness. Yeah, that's what. I don't know if that's the right answer, but that's how I look at it.
Go ahead.
I am guilty of not giving enough gratitude. What do you advise in building a habit of thinking that so much good things are happening in your life?
So I think it's personal, but I'll share this with the group. I actually have a prayer bead, right? And every day I actually spend 33 times thinking about 33 good things that happened to me today, or 33 things that I should be grateful for. Every day, right, I spend at least 5 minutes, I think it's 5 minutes, maybe 4 minutes or 3 minutes, and I reflect every time I'm moving it to the next beat. I'm actually thinking, how good is my life? Should I be grateful for my health, the health of my wife, my kids, they're happy, they're healthy, my family's health, my business, all of those things. I say, you know what, in 1 second, in 1 minute, in 1 instant, my life could be completely different, and I have no control over it. I have no control over it, right? So the idea is that one habit which I have, right, which I think I never had that habit, I can tell you. I was never that guy who would have that prayer bead before you go to sleep, right? But I think that is stepping out of your concrete box and developing this mindfulness, which again, it comes with practice, and I think I've now been practicing it for a while. Yeah.
Question, all right.
Thank you.
33.
First, I want to congratulate you for this amazing. You really deserve it. I wanted to get your input on how much religion plays part in happiness.
So I've always believed that religion provides meaning, it provides purpose, right? It gives us our worldview, it gives us our morality. And I always feel that people who have a strong faith, at some level, they have all the answers. Whether those answers are right or wrong, but you have the answer. So if someone has that faith, they're already in a wonderful place, right? Now, as long as that faith does not make us narrow-minded, it does not make us myopic, it does not make us judgmental of other people's faith or no faith, right? If someone is atheist or agnostic, I have no right to judge that individual because I believe that my faith is as good as anyone else's faith or no faith, right? But faith brings immense meaning, purpose to a person's life. And it could be, faith is not, if we are conscious about our faith, if we are reflective about our faith, it is not a wall in our concrete box. It's a foundational pillar of our life, right? So the thing is that how do we stop our faith from becoming a wall and making it a foundation? That is by having that open mind, that appreciation for people with different faith. Because at the core, again, I don't know if everyone will agree with it, that either all religions carry the same truth at the core or none of them do, right? I think at some level, if we come to that conclusion, again, religion, I think, is very powerful in terms of happiness and life satisfaction. Very powerful.
Congratulations, Dad.
All right. All right. This will be the hardest question.
First of all, I'm glad you don't believe in anti-natalism.
It's too late now anyway.
The second question is I wanted to touch on the Know Your World section of the book because I think, especially with the younger generation and younger people in this audience, some of the people may not share the same view that humanity is in its best place of all time. Perhaps with climate change or inequality or with social media, feeling disconnected, the thing you mentioned in your presentation. And I was just wondering if you could shed some more light on how to think about those future challenges and balance that with what we have to be grateful for.
So it's a very important question that how, in the book, I do spend a lot of time talking about the risks that we have to humanity. So humanity has never been more powerful, but humanity never had the ability to completely destroy itself. Today, we have the power to completely destroy life on Earth. We have that power. Never before did humans have that power. So, as I said, Spider-Man's uncle said that with great power comes great responsibility, right? So we have this responsibility around climate change. We have this responsibility around pandemics. We have this responsibility around nuclear war, right? That we need to be able to elect leaders, right, who are aware of these challenges and be able to navigate them in a way that the world continues to follow this improvement in pretty much every aspect of life. Yes, those challenges exist, and the trend in the last 150 years has been really positive. And my view is that this trend will continue. The world today is better than what it was yesterday, 10 years ago, 50 years ago. And will AI destroy humanity? I personally do not think so, but that's my view. Thank you.
All right. More questions. What else we got? Maybe one or two more questions? Well, all the way in the back there.
I'm here.
Yes.
Very good presentation, Feroz, and looking forward to listening to your book.
What do you think about greed? Is that a good or a bad thing?
I think about
Greed.
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 So I think, again, if we go back to human nature, right? Are we a pair bonding, loving species, or are we a tournament species, right? What motivates us? I think greed is an instinct. I think because we want to chase a certain status. Why do we want to chase that status? Is it because we want to signal that we could be a viable mate? We want to signal a certain status. We want to signal. So I think greed could be a motivator in life as long as it does not become counterproductive, where our greed does not overcome our morality, where greed is still a motivator rather than taking us in a direction where we lose our ethics, where we continue to cross the line between right and wrong. So greed, I think we say in the markets, stock markets, and pretty much all markets are driven by either greed or fear, right? People are investing sometimes at the peak of the market because of FOMO. Oh my God, Bitcoin is going to be $1 million. It's 128,000. I need to buy more, right? So at that time, greed is coming in. So how do we understand that? Oh, this is motivation. This is my desire to move forward, and here my greed has become negative, where it is counterproductive. So I think wanting to have more, wanting to do more. In my book, I say that I do not propose that whether someone should live a life of frugality or luxury, right? Both are perfectly fine. You can choose to live in luxury or you can be frugal, as long as you do not create a situation for yourself and your family where you get into financial insecurity. So if you have earned money, you have the right to spend it, right? But is that expenditure, right, or is that expense, or is that purchase being motivated by status, or it is something that a person cannot afford, then it becomes counterproductive. So there is no judgment whether luxury is better or frugality is better. I think it is a question of where, as long as it does not impede a person's financial security, I think luxury is as good as frugality.
All the way in the back there. Yeah, go ahead.
Good evening, Feroz. Pleasure to be here with these fine gentlemen and ladies. When it comes to time management, especially when after you read The How of Happiness that one evening, how did you know when to act, and when did you know not to be paralyzed by analysis?
So I think again, it is that awareness, right, where we are aware that it is time to take action, right? So we can have that idea which you say too much analysis leads to paralysis, right? So I think awareness and knowledge is important, but to the extent that it is helping us take action, because analysis by itself does not lead to any positive outcome. So so again, creating that vision, which is important for life. So thinking about where you want to go and having a plan, right, to be able to get there, I think is very helpful. So analysis has to turn into action, right? So, and the earlier we are able to turn it to action, the lower the probability that analysis can lead to paralysis.
So maybe I can add one piece of research here. So there's research that says actually the longer you take to make a decision, then the less difference the two choices make, right? So basically, if there's not much difference between two choices, then you just waste a lot of time because the marginal difference is small. But if it's obvious which one's better, then you'll immediately choose. So maybe you could just go deterministic on the ones you can't decide on, and you'll be okay.
Shall we do dinner? I think it's 7:30.
Okay. So did you have your glasses with you?
Yes, I do. But
Okay. So Feroz wanted me to read this section of the book, but how many would rather hear Feroz read his own book? Yeah, I think everyone would rather have you read your own book.
Actually, I don't have my glasses, so maybe I think.
Oh,
I can't
all
see.
of a sudden now.
Oh, I can't.
Yeah, you can borrow yours. All right. Where's Feroz's glasses? Who has them?
No, I don't have mine.
Here,
Let's see.
mine are probably not strong enough.
Yeah, I think you can read, Chris. I think that
Okay,
should be
all
good
right,
enough,
all
right? I think they're.
All right. I try to change it up on you. So, all right. So this is just a quick 1-minute passage from the book, and then we'll wrap things up. So this is at the end of the book. In these pages, you did something rare. You stopped long enough to look at the box. You traced its edges, the unspoken rules, the scripts you replayed, and the comparisons that stole your peace. You noticed how it shaped your career decisions, your spending, your giving, and even your relationships. What you once called normal was often inherited ideas, not your own considered choices. The box did not protect you. For a time, it offered the comfort of structure, the safety of identity, and the warmth of belonging. But as you look closer, you saw the cost, the dreams you never voiced, the conversations you avoided, the risks you never took, the joy you postponed. The box started to feel darker, the walls slowly narrowing around you. The work you've done here was not about escaping the box entirely. We all live within some structure and a belief system we create. The deeper task is to make that structure fully conscious and personally authentic, to ensure it reflects who you truly are, not just what you're handed. Today, you guys hold the key to the box. Feroz, thank you so much for being here tonight. Thanks for the book.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
So proud of you, my friend.
Thank you.